Kim, can you hear us?
There we are.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Eric Butler,
Yes.
Nancy Turner,
Yes.
Bruce Hildreth,
Yes.
Justice Mills,
Yes.
David Michael,
Yes.
and Kim, can you approve minutes or vote to approve?
Vote to approve. Yes.
Thank you. All right. Welcome, Kim. We're glad you're with us. Business from the staff. Mr. Canaparoli.
Yeah, so the first thing we have is a presentation on the transient lodging tax fund. And with that, I will turn it over to City Administrator Jackie Betts.
Good evening. Tonight, we're here to talk to you a little bit about transient lodging tax, what it is and how the city can spend those funds. And so tonight we have two speakers, and that will be Jim Austin. He's from the Mount Hood Territory, Clackamas County Transient Lodging Tax Division. And we have Marcy Jory, who's our Economic Development Coordinator and Tourism Coordinator, to talk to you about the city's transient lodging tax.
Welcome. And thank you for coming and letting us know this information.
Absolutely. We're excited to be here. Marcy Jory, City Economic Development and Tourism. And I'm really excited to have Jim with me today. Jim is works with Mount Hood Territory, who is Oregon's Mount Hood Territory, who is the DMO or the tourism department basically of Clackamas County. So they run the entire county's tourism, including Gladstone. He's a wealth of information, and we're going to let him get started to do a high level overview of TLT, transient lodging tax, what they are, how they're collected, and a little bit more information before we get down to some more specific Gladstone stats, Gladstone information.
Hi, I'm Jim Austin with Oregon's Mount Hood Territory, which is Clackamas County Tourism. We're a county department. Yes, we're the destination organization for Clackamas County. Thanks for asking me to be here. I'm worried about you. If this is exciting for you to have me present, you should probably get out more. But you know, okay. Yeah, so Marcy asked me to come here. I've been in the tourism department for, I don't know, about 13 or 14 years now. So have some familiarity with it. So the first slide is, I just want to give an overview. I don't know how much people know about how tourism works and how transient lodging taxes work. So it's a good just overview. The first slide is I call it the Oregon Tourism Universe. I don't know if you've all heard of the Oregon Tourism Commission or Travel Oregon. Maybe you've seen some of their stuff. They're the state's destination organization. They promote and do destination development for the entire state. We are actually in Clackamas County. We're branded as Mount Hood Territory because if we said, come visit Clackamas County, kids would probably be like, oh, I'm gonna, clean my closet or, do some homework, whatever that weekend is. So we branded ourselves as Oregon's Mount Hood Territory. It's a little more appealing, but we're in the middle of Travel Oregon. They promote the entire state, but they've also have the state divided up into 7 regions. They got the coast, Central Oregon, Southern Oregon, Eastern Oregon. I'll explain what those mean in a little bit. A couple more slides. Clackamas County is right in the middle of 3 of them. So we're about 1/3 in the Portland region, 1/3 in the Mount Hood Gorge region, and 1/3 in the Willamette Valley Visitors Association region, which is kind of weird, but actually it really works out because we call those areas our urban, valley, and mountain areas. And so it kind of divides up really. And if you're looking at collaboration and thematic sort of recreational tourism kind of things, it works for us. So, and Gladstone, you're all in the greater Portland, Travel Oregon's greater Portland region, and then Mountain Territories urban region. Thank you. Yep. It's getting there. This is a Monday for technology, at least it has been for me. Is anybody else a CenturyLink person? No service today. It was horrible.
Oh, I did it before. Thank you.
Yay. So there's the state of Oregon's tourism universe, and then what I call our Clackamas County tourism ecosystem. We're Clackamas County Tourism, and we work with some of our city partners or other local tourism partners. Sometimes the city's more engaged in tourism promotion and development activities. Sometimes it's, visit Wilsonville, Explore Wilsonville is actually a city department. Sometimes we have someone who's works with us that we coordinate with and collaborate with, who's in an economic development department. Sometimes it's a chamber or another 501c something that does tourism promotion that gets money from the local jurisdiction to do that effort. The next slide, we'll see if this works. I'm sure everybody is familiar with how transient lodging taxes work, but you check into a hotel, it's that little line at the bottom, but I don't know if everybody's familiar already. So and this is a slide deck from something else, but you pay it to a hotel, motel, visitors pay it. The operators collect it, could be campgrounds, or OTCs, online travel companies, Airbnbs, those bookings, whoever takes the money from the visitor is responsible for collecting it. Usually they get to retain a small portion of that funds for administrative. You're basically the front end, you're administering a tax system, collecting, and then they remit. The thing about transient lodging taxes is, and this is on the next slide, but there's a state transient lodging tax. Oh, we'll back up a little bit. See, so there's a state transient lodging tax. Statutes also allow for local governments to have transient lodging taxes. So some counties have transient lodging taxes and some cities have transient lodging taxes, and they're all different. The state transient lodging tax is remitted from the operator or whoever's selling the booking to the State Department of Revenue. Then they're submitting, at least in the county's case, they're submitting the county's transient lodging tax to the county finance department, and here in Gladstone, the city's finance department. So they're split, they're separate pools of money. Now let's go ahead, let's see what we got. And then Travel Oregon gets its funding from the state's 1.5% transient lodging tax. As I said, there's statutes that define what Travel Oregon does. Again, they kind of promote the state at like a 45,000 foot level. They're more engaged in some international promotion now that COVID's pretty much all behind us, starting to get back into that field. 65% supposed to be used for tourism promotion and development and operations funds. Statutes say that, what is that? I realize I need bifocals. 10% to use to fund a competitive statewide competitive tourism grant programs. They change that program every couple of years. And then 20% is used to support that regional cooperative tourism program, those 7 regions. And those funds are divided up to the regions in proportion in which the state TLTs are collected. And then some local entity within those regions acts as the fiduciary, the manager for those contracts. We happen to be the manager of the Mountain Hood Gorge region, which is Sandy, Estacada, and then up on the other side. But so, yeah. And then, let's see. Yeah, we don't need to get into that. That's just Travel Oregon. Anyway, that's their regional. It's who makes up regions are, like, we're a part of the Washington or the Willamette Valley. We're a member of the Greater Portland. So we sit at a table and we work with our partners in those regions in the Greater Portland region. Travel Portland has the contract. So every biennium we get together and come up with a 2-year work plan about how we're going to use the funds collaboratively. Because when people travel, usually they're traveling around an area, right? It's not just in one jurisdiction. So it's broken up thematically by sort of region. And then the county has a 6%. Oh, next slide. I can do this. Yes, and then the county has a 6% transient lodging tax remitted to our finance department. We have an ordinance that's passed by the voters. It's countywide. So our county tax is in the 6% tax is in cities and the county also. I forgot when that was passed. It was referred to the voters by the Board of County Commissioners, passed, then changed. But anyway, it's a countywide voter approved tax. 2% goes to administration to administer the program. A set amount, it's probably about $700,000 a year now goes to the county fair, and that was built into the ordinance to support their operations and their grounds. And then the remainder comes to Clackamas County Tourism. We have the Tourism Development Council, which is made up of industry representatives. We have hoteliers, we have some heritage partners, some recreation partners. They advise us on our scope of work. They help us put together our business plan and our budget, and occasionally update like our operating plan, like what we focus on. So let's go to the next one. And then the city has a 6% transient lodging tax too that goes to the finance department. State transient lodging revenues travel aren't shared with local governments. The county's transient lodging taxes aren't shared with, it's not a revenue sharing situation with the cities within the county. Each entity is responsible and accountable for the appropriate use of their own respective transient lodging taxes. So it seems like it's bifurcated, but there's just a lot of opportunities for collaboration and coordination, cross-pollination, built into that. And then, yay. Marcy has this in her slides as well, and she'll go more into the city's transient lodging tax program. ORS 320 authorizes and outlines transient lodging programs, both the state's program and what cities and counties can do with their transient lodging funds. Provides the definitions for programs for both the state and local areas. So that establishes, it established the Travel Oregon Tourism Commission. What is in yellow? That's a horrible font.
Provides authority for county.
Oh, there we go.
To create
Yeah,
TLT.
after this, I swear this week I'm gonna go get it checked out for bifocals. Yeah, so it also provides cities and counties the authority to have their own local transient lodging tax programs, and then put some parameters about what they can and can't do. So really the statute authorizes and says you can do this, has some structure around it, but the legislative record, there's an attorney general's opinion and then some case laws that define what appropriate use is, what constitutes a tourism facility. So you need to be mindful of that. We're weird because we're a county department that's operating in the tourism, in the DMO world, and most DMO, destination management organizations, are 501c3s, but we happen to be a county department, a local government department. So we're very cognizant about the kinds of things we fund. We don't want to get our employer, the county, sideways in a potential lawsuit or a bad media for misuse of funds. The only group that's out there that really sort of, I guess, watchdogs the integrity of how the funds are used. It's the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association. So their members, the hoteliers, are the ones who are collecting and remitting them. Oftentimes they think of these as their taxes, but really they're just collecting them and passing them along. But they, occasionally they will, not often, but occasionally, if one of their members says, look, I think a jurisdiction's using their TLT funds for something that is not right, they may ping Orla. Orla may do a letter of inquiry or just reach out to a city administrator and say like, hey, what's going on? A request for more information. They don't usually, they're very selective. They have sued a couple of jurisdictions, but they're very selective about what they do because they just want to maintain the integrity of the program, the statute, the intent of the statute, how the funds are collected and what funds are collected for. It's only been a couple of times, but they're very selective because they don't want to spend a lot of time. They'd rather work with jurisdictions. But when they do, on the couple of occasions that they have litigated, their batting average is like 1,000%. So, so just something to be mindful of. And I think, is there one more? We try to be mindful. Those are some takeaways. It's not trickle down. The ordinance will provide what you can do, and each jurisdiction is responsible for their own funds. And yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. You see why I have him. He knows all the things about all the Travel Oregon and the regional tourism. It's teaching in his sleep. I'm going to go to the next slide. All right. So TLT and Gladstone, like Jim was saying, we have a 6% lodging tax, and that includes Gladstone's 2 hotels and any short-term rentals, Airbnbs, VBROs, those kind of things. And those funds are collected and remitted by either the individual property owners, obviously the hotels themselves, or the booking services. Usually if it's a short-term rental, it's most often the booking service. So Airbnb, Priceline, Expedia, and we just kind of get a check from them when people are remitting to them that tax. 2017 is when this ordinance came into play in Gladstone. Before that, it's my understanding, and Jim, you might actually know if I'm wrong, but that Gladstone was one of the last jurisdictions in the county to actually establish a TLT. So we haven't had it for a long time. And so we are now working on getting that tourism programming and projects underway. We're really excited to be able to do that. Go ahead and get the next one, please. Some of the projects that the Gladstone Transient Lodging Tax has funded include the Flower Basket Program that you see on Portland Avenue that has been going wonderfully and that they're gorgeous and we're hoping to expand. The street banners that we've purchased, the installation and removal of those every year. Any of the logo and branded items that we are able to do and do for giveaways for things like Halloween or the festival. The holiday lights on Portland Avenue, we just purchased 8 new with TLT funds this year. So we'll have more of the snowflakes that are lit up on Portland Avenue this year and make our downtown more festive and beautiful and make more people want to come visit us there. Wayfinding signage, for example, Meldrum Bar, wayfinding signs to downtown Gladstone. Those are all ways that we can use TLT funds. Our mural program, which was greatly successful and really brought a lot of vibrancy into the community. Last year's event sponsorship program, and then also Trick or Treat Portland Avenue are other things that we can do with TLT. Next, please. Like Jim was saying, there are very specific things that can be funded with transient lodging dollars. And they have to be, because of the ORS, they have to be projects that fund tourism or tourism related facilities. Tourism or tourist activities can be for business, pleasure, recreation, the arts, culture. So it doesn't just have to be somebody coming in to, sightsee something. It could be somebody coming in for a business meeting. It could be an arts and culture event. It can be lots of different things, but the idea is that a tourist comes from outside of your community that's not connected to your community. So somebody coming from Oregon City to come shop in Gladstone isn't considered, or to go to one of our parks is not considered a tourism related activity. Somebody coming, the gold standard is 50 miles away. That's what the ORS says, 50 miles away, or creates an overnight stay. So the hotels, as Jim was saying, we have hoteliers that are on ORLA, the Oregon Restaurant Lodging Association, that have the oversight. So they're kind of watching around, and the people who own hotels around here may be watching, kind of seeing what we're doing with tourism funds. And they would love to see more heads and beds. What are these taxes going for? Tourism related facilities could be interpretation type of places, river access points that reduce user conflicts. Thanks for all the language around this, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
And safety and trail improvements. And one thing that Jim said today it really struck me when we were speaking on the phone earlier. He said, you have to be able to articulate how the project is reasonably expected to bring visitors into the community. So we might like a certain spot in Gladstone and really have, just a great love for it, but it doesn't mean that that's necessarily going to we're not gonna be able to bring actual true visitors into Gladstone. And we already spoke about Orla. Next, please. My last one. So the Gladstone, when you start thinking about things that you'd like to see happen with tourism, or what are we going to do with our tourism funds? All of our decision-making processes are guided by the tourism strategy that you should have, I believe, in your packet. If you don't, you can always get copies of it. It's online. Here. And in the tourism strategy, there's some areas that are listed out that have to do with, like, what are some big picture, what are some things that people are coming to Gladstone for? And the 3 things of the 4 that are listed that really have the potential to bring people to true visitors, to bring them to Gladstone would be, they mentioned sports, Main Street appeal, park and nature, and then also community events, which is also listed in here as well. And these are all different ways that we're able to focus on creating some programming. So if you go through the tourism strategy, there are ideas, there are projects that are laid out that are recommended, that were identified through the process of creating the strategy. And that's what guides how the money spent and where it's spent. Next, please. I think that really is the main gist, the high level overview, unless Beth, you have more you want to offer for that?
No, I think this was, for me, I'm looking at it is how can this benefit the Parks Board? And so basically the reason why we did want the tourism strategy to be part of your binder is because when you're thinking about access to parks and trails, public spaces and recreational facilities, If you're thinking about, you just completed a Meldrum Bar Park site plan, to go back and look in there, and we can help you determine which of those projects we could use some of our transient lodging tax. Specifically, there's an amphitheater in the Meldrum Bar Park site plan. That would draw people in from the outside to come to Gladstone. So the Parks Board can start thinking as you're working on your goals for the next 2 years, if there are some transient lodging tax dollars that we can leverage towards that. And it is a good idea to build up that balance a little bit. I believe the city has close to $400,000 in their budget. We have 23,000 that Marcy still can spend through this biennium budget. And as we go into the next biennium budget, we can spend some of those funds. Jim had mentioned the Oregon Lodging Association, and 2 years into our new ordinance, we did get notice from the Oregon Lodging Association. They did a public records request. They wanted to see how the city has spent all of their funds. This was triggered by one hotelier in Gladstone that didn't want to pay those. When they saw that we had developed a tourism strategy and that we had appropriately used those funds, they backed off. So that's why we're very careful about how we spend those funds. We're building up a balance, but from a parks perspective, start thinking about how can you draw people in from the outside to visit our parks?
That's helpful, Jackie. The question that is kind of forming in my mind is if there's an idea out there for tourism, is there a board or, I mean, how do you get that idea into the thought process of the people that would say, that's a great idea, we're going to release the funds?
I think that you start with Marcy with the ideas. We've heard farmers market. You need a champion to do a farmers market, but all of those can be channeled through Marcy, and she can start helping those conversations so that we can make a determination if that's worth applying some of our transient lodging tax dollars towards.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? This is Nancy Turner, excuse me. So can the funds be used for a facility such as the amphitheater?
I believe that would qualify, yes.
Perfectly.
Yes.
Okay. Upgrades on the ball fields so that they could do tournaments?
Yeah, tournaments are an excellent example of what draws people in to, especially at Meldrum Bar Park. We had a big tournament this past year, and even the hoteliers will tell you that's what draws people in to come and stay. So all of those are the things that you should be thinking about. But you can also, we can run them through Marcy, and we can let you know. Nick Shannon Park, no, probably wouldn't, because that's not going to draw somebody up there for new playground equipment. So those are the types of things, though, that you can check with staff on, and will help you make those decisions.
David?
At the risk of being predictable, the undercrossing,
Mhm.
would that be
Yeah.
decent match money through the transfer? I'm sure I can't have been the first one to think about that.
No, I think it's good, though, because in Gladstone, we're revenue poor. And so we applied for a grant to try to complete that.
Right.
If the city has a match requirement, we could use transient lodging tax to help leverage those grant funds. So that's exactly the type of creativity we're thinking of as well.
It's actually not specifically listed, but on your tourism strategy, under Parks and Nature, connect all 5 riverfront parks. Yep, exactly. Yeah, good thinking.
Or if there were sections that were, if there's asphalt that had been laid down a long time ago that's since grown very bumpy and could be hazardous to people with mobility issues, and it's like repaving to make them smoother, or, increasing accessibility to people with,
Okay, that's also in there?
yeah.
Yeah, and the League of Oregon Cities is thinking about taking on the legislature this year to loosen up the restrictions on how those funds can be spent, because it's a different for each community on how they're spent, but it does affect your emergency services because of the people that come in. It affects your streets. And so there may be a push to relieve that 70% that must be used only on tourism-related facilities. And so we'll know more about that as we go through the next legislative process.
Justice, any questions? Okay, anyone else? Is there anything else you want to share with us? Like,
So many.
so ideas that are bumping around with you.
Oh my gosh, there's.
Can you narrow them down, like the top
Well,
three?
I honestly, what I do is I go through the tourism
Mhm.
strategy and I look there. So right now we're focused on getting ready for holidays in Portland Avenue, some Portland Avenue beautification kind of projects. That's where we're focused for the rest of this year. And then we'll work to kind of create a little bit more of a structure around what makes most sense for the next biennium, going through the tourism strategy and kind of trying to make sure it feels balanced between the different kind of pillars of where you would put the money so that it's not just all in one spot, you know?
Okay, so if you were to see a need,
Mhm.
like you think, wow, the community center is really working on these music on the greens, trying to get people, and would you then come to us and say, hey, we really want you to focus on this one? You would bump us and let us know to pay attention? Or do we need to initiate it with you?
I think that if there's a parks project that you want to see, that you would initiate with me, and also internally with staff, we are always talking about the different needs and how things are growing.
Okay.
So I mean, definitely bring anything to us, absolutely, but also know that we're watching these events to kind of see how they evolve. And right now it's a little community event, but that doesn't mean that someday it could turn into something more tourism related. Absolutely. But at this point, it's not.
Okay, or a bigger band?
Yeah, right,
Okay.
sure.
Okay, all right. Anything else?
That's,
No.
that's what
okay.
I tell our partners, both our city partners and our chamber partners and our Main Street partners and our industry partners, hoteliers and recreation outfitters and guides it's like, ping us early, ping us often with ideas. Some
Yeah.
things we can work on, some things we can make fit. Sometimes we can't, but we can redirect and
Yeah, it's always
sure
good
that
to have
ideas
other new eyes and ears and
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah, as I was reading through the handout that we got, it was like, oh, what about that? So it's a really good push to kind of think about it
Yeah.
because the parks are kind of getting to that point where we need to start looking at that. So
Absolutely, yeah.
thank
Yeah,
you.
no.
Thank you both for
Thank
your
you.
time.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
Jackie,
much.
for helping. Appreciate that. Okay. A shed. I know.
versus like us.
Wesley.
Have different teams, shed.
Oh, yeah.
I think that'd be totally awesome. No. No, it's a topic that happens at my house too. So I think you're not far from, yeah. No, they're right out here.
Are they?
It's a lot of fun. Okay,
Get the watershed council on board.
yeah, and get the watershed, and I'm sure we can find another 501 like Trout Unlimited or something. Kim, I didn't ask you if you had any questions.
No questions from me. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Our next item, business from the staff, Darren, update on the David M. Scott Park.
So just to give a little bit of introduction to this, after your June Parks and Recreation Board meeting, I received a letter from the Ridgegate Coalition expressing concerns that they were not involved with the planning process at the eastern portion of the property known as David M. Scott Park. As all of you know, citizen engagement and participation are crucial to community park planning. And when the citizens are involved in the designing and planning and managing parks and open spaces, they are informed and feel valued. After I received that letter, we scheduled a meeting on July 19th to meet with probably about 12 of the neighborhood owners there on site. And I'll have Darren give a little bit of an overview of what was discussed, and then we can talk about what staff is recommending.
Yeah, so like Jackie said, we met mid-July. There was a lot of good discussion that was had on site with the property owners. They they shared their concerns with the benches and garbage cans that we had talked about prior. One of their main concerns with the benches is placement of them. And there really isn't a good spot in the park to place a bench where you're not going to be looking into someone's backyard or windows or anything like that. The garbage can, the concern with the garbage can is that most of the people that go to the park are coming from Cracksburger in and cutting through. We had originally talked about putting the garbage can out on Ridgegate, which at that point, there wouldn't be a lot of trash. There's not a trash issue at this park. We've never had a trash issue at this park. So they're concerned by adding the trash can would give more maintenance for staff, which would have to go there on a weekly, well, bi-weekly basis, or not by, excuse me, twice a week to change the trash cans out and stuff like that. There was discussion on the signage. In the original plan, we had that out on Ridgegate. Their concern with that is most of the traffic in the park comes from Cracksburger Elementary School. And you don't really realize that there's a transition from the school onto city property. One thing that was discussed with that is putting up park rules sign, which would, and then take the sign and move that sign to the back of the property so that when people do come through Cracksburger, they realize they're on city property. The key thing for the park rules sign is if there's anything that's going on that is illegal or not, that's on the park rule sign, it can be enforced at that point. This park does not have a park rule sign, as you know. So the discussion was good with all property owners. Everybody had things to say and let us know what their concerns are. And yeah, and that's pretty much what the main discussion was.
We also talked about why didn't we do a community survey? And we did that for Robin Hood. And I want to apologize to the Parks Board because staff could have done a better job engaging the community before we brought a recommendation for you to add benches, sign, and a garbage receptacle. So internally, we're working on that. And I think we want to do a better job of community engagement with all of our parks going forward and understanding what it is that the residents would like there. Through this process, we also learned that the school district has been having issues with Frisbee golf that's being played on their property. And so what we would like to recommend is that we not put a bench down there, we don't put a garbage receptacle, but we do feel like we need to put signage and the park rules down at that end of the property. So there's been encroachment on our property where the Frisbee discs have been putting a platform so that they have a longer place to throw into the basket. And they probably don't even know that that is city's property. So our recommendation to you would be to reverse the decision that was made in June. And I believe we have guests here tonight that could speak, but we would be amenable to just adding a sign and the park rules down below. We would work with them before the placement of that and not worry about the rest of the amenities in the future. If that is something that the Parks Board wants to consider, we would certainly engage the coalition again, and we would recommend doing a community survey first.
This is Nancy. Are there any questions from the board on how this has come about?
So, it seemed, it took me a long time before I knew that was a park at all as well. You know, I've been going through there ever since we moved here back in '84. And, I'm not really territorial in the sense that, okay, if it's a park and it's part of the school, I mean, who cares? Do we really need that rule sign there? And who's going to read it? Will it have any value? I mean, we know the rules are probably similar on the other side of in the school property as well. So if you're going to put it on the property coming in from the school, I don't know how much value that has. That's only, and by the way, I'm very comfortable with reversing it simply because do no harm sounds like a better idea than make everybody mad for something that seemed like a good idea.
Yeah, the timing of this is interesting when we met with the coalition, and then I've been working with the superintendent on these issues that are arising with the Frisbee golf. And they're not able right now, our law enforcement can't enforce anything on school property because they have not adopted any rules. If we want to enforce them drinking on the property or smoking, then that's why we need to have the park's rules listed there. But certainly we could modify that down to where it's in an area where it really is for the people that are coming from the school district property. There's a trail down there for that area, but that's primarily, it's more for an enforcement procedure that the rules are identified.
So this is Bruce Hildreth. So the question I have is the fact that it is a park, there has been encroachment, there's not going to be any signage that says it's a park?
No, we are recommending that we do add the David M. Scott Park sign.
Okay, and would that be at the place that pedestrians travel, which is at a sidewalk, not school property?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? Kim, how about you?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Okay. I do think it's sad that in the 47 years that the district has had this park, that we're just now kind of getting to this point. I think a lot of hard feelings and misunderstandings if something had been done, but we can't go back. So all we can do is go forward. So if there's no other questions,
Chair
Or-
Turner, I think we do have public comment tonight.
is there any public comment?
Introduce you. We have a guest speaker, Harvey Barnes.
So, for the record, I'm Harvey Barnes. I live in the Ridgegate neighborhood. I don't live adjacent to the property, the tract that we're talking about tonight. But the encroachment is an issue, and it's coming from the school side. And so the neighbors in the area suggested that you put the sign, we call on the back of the property by the school property. And the reason is I've been told that the disc golf players spiked a piece of carpet down to the grass in the park area and killed a rather large piece of grass. And so the neighbors in the area believe that if there's a sign that kind of delineates their disc golf area on the school property from the city's property, it might help to avoid more big patches of grass missing. As we agree with Jackie and Darren, one of the concerns with benches and the carpet in there is people like to smoke dope in that park when they're just standing around. Not opposed to that if that's what you want to do. But the neighbors that don't really like that are on both sides of that park property there. So we believe that you would just encourage a comfortable place to sit, loiter for a while and toke up if that's what you choose to do. And so we don't want that. We understand the need for the sign. Pretty good looking signs. I've been down to Milton Bar and down to Cross Park and Charlie Ames Park. And it'll benefit the park to delineate where the park is and where the school district is, and hopefully the disc golf players will understand that. The trash can, you just think that's just going to be, if it's a full-size trash can, that's just going to be full of garbage from people driving by and passing by, and it's just going to be a mess. And it'll draw rats and vermin, and we can just all live without that. But sign, we're good with it. good-looking signs, and I would ask that you just adopt what the staff is recommending. Any questions? Oh, yeah.
We also have public comment from Marna Barnes.
I'm Marna Barnes. I live in the Ridgegate neighborhood as well. And I want to say thank you to you guys for hearing us. We've come a long way in a few years, and we appreciate it. The neighborhood appreciates it. Everybody got a heads up about this meeting tonight. And so we knew what was going to be proposed to you. We would encourage that you adopt what staff has recommended. The neighborhood, the coalition is happy with that. And there was much rejoicing in Mudtown when that came out. So we appreciate it. We thank you very much, and we hope you do adopt it. Okay, thanks.
This is Mayor Milch. One question I had, Darren, you indicated that a lot of the people entering the park are coming from the Kraxberger Middle School side. I assume by that you mean middle school students may be walking to and from school, or families using the middle school facilities for something else who happen to go through this park on the way out. But I wonder whether the coalition included families of middle schoolers or families of young children. If this park had if there were any preferences among people like that for how this park might best serve the broader community or serve the needs of middle schoolers, since it is adjacent to the school. I hadn't heard comments of that variety. I occasionally do hear from families in the community who want improvements to local parks that are designed as part of their mission to serve children and young people. That's why we upgrade playground equipment in those parks. But I didn't know if this park had kind of a different way that people connect to it. It's not a nature park per se, like the one with hiking trails. It's never been a playground type park. So how do we envision it as being something that serves both a neighborhood community and a school community, since it's in proximity to both? And I think that our guests probably could address that best, since you've talked to some of the families, or you've talked to your neighbors about it, and you've lived there and had a middle school age grandchild for a while.
Harvey Barnes again, in case you forgot. Mayor, I'll tell you how we envision that area over there. That's the smaller of two parcels that the city owns, Tract D and Tract E. And we envision the best use for that property is natural and wild as it can be for the critters, for birds, the owls, all the ground critters, and keep it for good open space. And there's a pathway that goes from Ridgegate Drive over to the school, and the kids the junior high kids, middle school kids use that to go to school, but they don't really loiter much on their way to and from school. It's just through. Now, what we refer to where the real use is the doggy parade. And that is around the activity field at Kraxberger Middle School. And if you go there every morning, pretty much the same dogs and the same people are going around the track. And that's where where most 99% of the traffic is passing by the city's property next to I think it's a baseball field right there. And by the way, there's already 2 benches at the baseball field just across the property line from the city's property into the school district property. So we see it as open and natural. And I understand, and it's a good thing to keep that area through to the school mowed down, which the city does. I think you come down every week, roughly. And they keep that mowed so kids can go through there on the on the pathway to the school. Mow that area and leave the rest of it natural. Leave the trees, leave the wildness of the large parcel just for all the critters that live there. And unless you really studied that, one of the biggest uses of the large parcel is surface water drainage. I know you read that on the plat map, and until you see all the water and understand all the water that comes onto that property, it's just amazing, especially when you get a thunderstorms that we've been getting as lately. There's probably 15 or 20 4-inch drain pipes that drain onto that property. Active spring that drains on there year round. And so the best use of it, honestly, leave it for the owls. There's a pair of owls on that property. So leave it wild and leave it natural and just let the critters live there. And, you know, it's been suggested by a couple of people that in the future sometime, when we kind of think about what you want to say on it, if people get troubled by the naturalness of the larger parcel, put a sign on it out there someplace to let people know that that's habitat for critters. It's stormwater drainage that is soaked up and is drained natural. So let people know what that property really does. It's not being disrespected. It's not being neglected. It is just being used at its highest and best use. And that's what we envision for it. Any questions about all that? Yes, I did. So there are 2 tracks there. The one nearest Cracksburger, I think, is tract D, I think, or is that E? That's the one that we're talking about now. The larger parcel across the street that lies between Monticello Drive and Ridgegate is the larger parcel, which that's tract E, I believe. And so
And the Parks Board we were only talking about D.
that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was never our intent to do anything.
And
on
we're
the other
thankful
track.
for that.
Yeah.
We
We
like tract
understand.
E
We
is
understand.
perfect.
So, yeah, it was just the D track and trying to get it kind of in compliance with the other parks in the city with a sign.
The
And-
sign is actually, they're fairly attractive
Yeah,
signs.
they,
And if I could make a suggestion, I don't know, you only got so many post holes you want to dig. Just for the look, if you put the sign, the park sign, and then maybe a bit away from it, behind it or something, put the rule sign, so you get the colorful sign first, and then you get the rules after you see that sign. It would just, I think it'd just be a better look for whatever that's worth.
Mayor Milch.
Thank you. That's helpful for me. You know, as mayor, sometimes we look at these issues from a little farther back and see their interconnectedness to other things. And I know that our transportation system for the city, transportation system plan emphasizes connectivity. And it sounds like this little park area the way that the land is arranged, it creates a connectivity opportunity for students, for people using the middle school. And that's positive from a transportation standpoint, that people don't have to circle around on streets close to cars, they can walk there. And I'm glad that citizens and the Parks Board recognize that not every park needs to serve the same kinds of needs, and understand the distinctive character of parks which provide open space and habitat, parks which provide playground opportunities for children, parks which provide recreational opportunities for team sports. They're all different, and the way you carefully plan them and distribute them around the city enhances the system as a whole. So that's why we're so appreciative of our advisory group for stepping back and looking at this, listening to the public, and making sure that things are designed in a way that meets a variety of needs. So I'm grateful to you.
Thank you. I know there's a lot of living down here on the lower part, I know my daughter used to go through several little connectors through cul-de-sacs to get up to Cracksburger. So there are several within the city, and once you learn them, they're kind of fun. So that's just part of moving around the city. So if there's any other questions, comment? Who are you?
I'm Bruce Hillrith. Thanks, Nancy. I want to go back in history just a little bit. When this board, which was comprised of other people, worked on the city's master plan for parks, we were advised by a paid consultant not to develop any more pocket parks, which would be parks like Nick Shannon and our Robin Hood Park, I guess, and then we could say the David M. Scott Park. It'd be a pocket park. And I think at that time, it was just deemed to be just make that park a significant park. It's owned by the city. It should be named a park. And what I'm thinking of here is the fact that it has a pathway through it. Don't know if the city put it there, if the school put it there for kids to come through. There's a fair amount of traffic that comes back and forth, whether it originates at the school or that's its destination. It has a lot of traffic. I know this, I'm up there every day. The next part of that is there's a house on Penny Court that was sold, and for 40 years, I believe, it allowed kids to pass back and forth, and adults. I even walked on it, and this is going way back when I realized that kids were using it. But I realized too, it was somebody's property. Well, it got sold. They put a fence across there. So guess where everybody has to go now on that side of Ridgegate? They have to come through the park. So I don't know if this is a dialogue. So you now have more traffic that comes through that park. I don't know about the benches. The benches don't need to be there. They don't need to be there, but the signage needs to be there. I believe a small trash can with a poop station for dogs, because you even said when you were speaking, Mr. Barnes, that there was dog traffic. I know the school has a big problem with poo, and it makes it difficult for the kids to go out and use these fields if people don't pick up after their dogs. If there's a sign at one of the main entrances to the park, to the school, however you want to delineate that, it's still a park. People are coming in there. They will relieve their dogs in a park. There needs to be a poo station because we have them in all the other parks. Now, the other part that I want to comment on is I'm asking to reverse my decision that I made earlier and to follow the staff's recommendation. I don't know if I know what the staff's recommendation is right now. If it was just, I heard reverse at some point, so I don't know what that recommendation is.
So I pulled the minutes from the June meeting, and a motion was made to approve the location for the park bench, signage, trash can, and doggy bag dispenser. So tonight, I would recommend that you make a motion to reverse that decision that was made at the June Parks Board meeting and authorize staff to place signage at the park.
Okay, that's clear.
Oh, we need to stay focused on the David M. Scott Park. So at this point, if there's no other comment from either the audience or the board.
I have a comment.
Okay.
I do think at some point we should do some kind of community survey or input. I'm also a user of that park, but not a resident of the neighborhood. And I think it's really important that we don't forget about the people who are using that park, but maybe don't live there. Obviously, the coalition's important, the neighbors are very important, but so are other Gladstone residents and people who use that area. I'm part of the dog parade. And I do walk my dogs up there. I would love it if there were a dog station, or at least a small trash can, because otherwise there's one that's way off the path in the middle school. So I guess I will support whatever staff recommendation is for now, but I do think that we should still consider more for this park in the future. I just think that we should have input from other people, and that there should at some point be a survey that matches the surveys we do in the other parks to keep things standard. But okay, if that doesn't happen at this time.
Okay. Any other comments from the room? Okay, so before us, we have a recommendation that we passed back in June to put in the 3 amenities. And right now, we have before us the staff recommendation to, at this time, place the signs, both the city identifying the sign and then the rules. So I would entertain a motion to do that. If someone would like to make that motion.
Just a point of clarification, if we decided on a placement for the signage, given that placement has been one of the concerns about the originally proposed amenities. Eric, by the way.
I think it was stated earlier that between Public Works and the coalition that they would meet on site and come up with the location. I think there were some concerns over the exact border and that needed to be identified so that the sign was actually placed on city property. So that would be worked out between Public Works and the coalition and the boundary.
That is correct. We would meet with them and discuss the location for both those signs.
Yeah,
on
and I
the
think
property.
also how many tree roots and all of it. So, yeah.
Yes.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Okay. I think it's important, just from my feeling, is that at the very least, at this point, to move ahead with the signs. And I think it's important to get the rules up there so that should something happen, it can be enforced. And if down the road, the coalition or the neighborhood decides that, we really do want a trash can up here with the dog station, you are welcome to open that conversation, and we would cheerfully work with that again. So it's not a done deal. This isn't the least, this is the least. I think it's important to get a name on the park. 47 years is a long time. It should be there. I mean, this was quite a gift that Mr. Scott gave to the city, and we need to acknowledge that. So I guess that's how I'm looking at it. This isn't the only answer. This is a partway answer, and let's get the signage on it and let people kind of think about how that park is used and if it would benefit from more amenities and what they might be. So that's my feeling. Anybody else? David?
I move that we make it so.
Okay, I have a motion that we move ahead with the 2 signs. One is the city identifying sign and the other one is the current rules to be placed between Public Works and the coalition on location. Do I have a second?
Eric Butler, a second.
All in favor? Kristen, can you please read?
Yes. Kate Cornelius.
Yes.
Kim Agramson.
Yes.
Eric Butler. Yes. Nancy Turner.
Yes.
Bruce Hildreth.
Yes.
Justice Mills.
Yes.
David Michael.
Okay, at this point, we'll move ahead with the signs. And please do keep us posted if should something come up that you want more. You're very welcome. Okay, moving ahead, Mr. Canaparoli, our update on the RC track at Meldrum Park, please.
Yeah, so back in July, we had a meeting with the RC track folks. There was, I believe, 5 people that attended that meeting, which I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but what we've had in the past, that's 5 times more. So It was a good meeting. There was a lot of discussion. We talked about the need for a user group with that group of people. We have user groups with baseball. We have user groups with softball, pickleball, soccer, all of those groups that use the park. And I think by having those user groups, it makes it a better, more fluid conversation with the city and the organization. So we're still pushing for that. I'd like to see 3 to 5 people on that for the user group. They were not opposed to that. Actually, they thought it was a really good idea. It helps give them a voice with the city and likewise with us with them. So we're still working on that, obviously. Some of the other things we talked about were the park rules. Some of the concerns that you had, and we've heard some from others, that they don't follow the park rules with drinking, smoking, things like that in that area. Those were specifically mentioned to them. I had also mentioned with them that we would take and put a park rule sign down there. The problem is at Meldrum, when you first drive in, you have a very large sign when you first drive in, but there is no other signage really within the park stating what the rules are. And I think what happens a lot of the times is people come in, they don't necessarily see the sign, or they've driven through there so many times they don't pay attention. I think having a sign right there where they're congregating would be a very good idea. They were not opposed to that either. We talked about the gas-powered vehicles. Obviously, there was an ordinance that was passed, I believe, 2 council meetings ago, stating that no gas-powered vehicles would be allowed. And then we talked about the excavation and how that needed to stop. They, inside the actual park, the fenced area there, they've not really been doing any digging there, but on the outside of that, on the other side of the pathway, they've created kind of they call it a crawler track. I had mentioned to them that they need to remove said crawler track and that it needs to go within the confines of what they already have and not expand out beyond that. There was a little bit of pushback on that. And the reason is because the kids use that. And which I get, I understand that, but they need to understand also that they can't just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We talked about erosion issues, concerns of the water running off of the track, going across the pathway there, and then ultimately going down to the river. We talked about the silt fence that the city's going to be putting up down there before rains come. I told them it's very important that that fence stays in contact, meaning they're not going to tear it down, any of that type of a thing. We talked about keeping the walking path clean so that pedestrians coming through that area don't have to walk through mud and muck. And then one of the main things that I talked to him about that I thought is important is maybe not use the track when it's raining. You know, when it's not usable, don't sweep the mud and muck off of the track into the walking space that others use. They understood where I was coming from with that. And I mean, just in general, the whole meeting was actually pretty good. I know that Nancy was there. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Nancy, but I thought there was good conversation. There was there was 2 individuals that were thinking about joining that user group. One of them wasn't sure if he'd be able to because he's going to be moving out of the area. So we're still pushing to get a user group together with them. And then we're going to be setting up a meeting probably mid-September with them again to continue to push and to continue to have those conversations going forward. So that's really the gist of it, unless you want to add something, Nancy.
You know, I saw a camaraderie, is what I saw, and which helped me kind of understand. I'm really torn. I think this is a really hard topic for me. I understand the need for this. I understand the camaraderie, but I also look at the damage that's being done at the park. And that tree hugger in me just really struggles with that part. So there has to be a middle point here at some point that we can arrive at where needs are met on both sides. And I'm hoping that the user group and continuing to talk will get there. But the trail needs to be safe. I've almost fallen there. I've watched other people almost fall. And I mean, that's a huge lawsuit. And I don't want to see somebody with a broken hip. So that's one of my biggest concerns. And the damage to the riverbank and those. So those are my big concerns. But I also, like I said, I saw this camaraderie. I saw I saw a different side to it because I'm not an RC car person. I don't know how they work. But I understand why they're there and I understand why that track's important. So I got that. Anybody else? Questions, concerns? Eric?
I had a thought that maybe a good long-term goal should be remain to relocate the RC track to a more appropriate location. And given the initial presentation we had this evening, it sounds like that could be a good opportunity to use transient lodging tax funding to build a new, better facility, more appropriate location. And then there's the West Good Neighbor Authority funding that would be good opportunity to decommission the existing facility and kind of return that to more natural and environmentally healthy state. So just a thought.
Yeah, so on the master plan for Meldrum Bar Park, that does move. It moves kind of in the gravel area as you first come in that area there. So it's not slated to stay there, but again, it all comes down to funding as well.
So Darren, this is Bruce Hildreth. I'm kidding.
I know it's
I want to say thank you for engaging these people. It's been a long time that I don't think there's been really any engagement. And I call them these people because I'm going to ask you a question. The 5 people that met, are they residents of Gladstone or are they from the outside? And the reason I asked too is Eric brought up a very good point about, moving that place, and resurrecting it back into its natural state. But I don't think a user group that is not residents of Gladstone should be involved in making those decisions or inputting into that.
Yeah, I didn't ask where they live or anything like that. So I can't really answer if they were residents or not.
Okay. It might be a good thing to note if you,
Mhm.
without violating their personal, but I mean, if they're willing to work with you, they should probably tell you whether they're residents or not. Because it would play into the transient tax, when you take a look at the fact that they might be coming from other places, further away, and it might be a draw. But, all right, thank you.
Well, Bruce asked my question about the, whether they're from out of the city or not. And I think, I'm David. Thank you. I think it's really important. Are these folks going to be able to pay any kind of user fee for this? Pickleball plays user fees, soccer plays user fees, baseball does. And a lot goes into prepping all those grounds and some of the stuff they've built. Well, I don't think we're asking anything of these people other than they show up from out of the city and go down there and have some beers and ruin the ground and then leave. I like camaraderie too, but I'm going to tell you, if this is in my backyard, I'm going to have a problem. I think that we on this board, I think we would like to treat our parks as our backyards. I know the folks over there in Ridgegate do, and it's rightly so. So, why do they get this consideration when they're damaging things and we don't even know who they are? And they won't tell us because we didn't ask them. I really don't think that their engagement is worth as much time as what the city's and our engagement has been. I would like to see them held to account, and to do that, they should come forward here and talk to us and introduce themselves. Because we just keep going over this and they continue to make damage and we're just hoping that they won't. And that just doesn't sound like a good, strong government.
Any other comments? No? Okay. All right. Darren, thank you for sticking with this. I know it's not an easy task and I know there's a lot of nuances here and feelings with people. And I think it comes from a good spot. I think everybody really loves Meldrum and they want to see what's best for Meldrum. And sometimes that's hard to figure out what is the best thing and how can we use our resources. So I appreciate you staying with it. And I'm sure we'll hear more.
Yes, I'll update you after the next meeting.
Thank you. Okay. So is there any other business from the staff? Anything new or different?
Nope, that's all that I have.
Okay, great. Thank you. So moving on to business from the board. The only thing under this is kind of a quick look at some goals for the next biennium that we sent out. And Kristen, you can put those up for us, please. And granted, Darren was just telling me that we don't really need to have those ready until like November, but I don't want to wait until November. I don't do well in a pinch. So, and I really, this was something I kind of listened to what everyone had talked about and some of the things people had said and kind of just cobbled it together. So I do ask that you kind of look at it, change the wording if you think it works better, or if we're on task, if we're missing something. I don't know how people are feeling. Anybody read them? Somebody talk.
Well, this is Bruce Hildreth. I'm just looking at some of them as an example. Number 2, complete design and construction of paved loop trail. My understanding is that we've received haven't received the funding, but we've received the approval for the funding. And I don't think we've ever seen a design at this point in time. And I don't think it's in our hands. So I don't even know why it's on our list.
Karen, do you have some thoughts on that? It's my thought that we need to continue to kind of work with it until we actually get a design. And once the funds have been released, then we can go out for design. And I'm sure that maybe we will have some options to talk about within that process.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Like it when I'm on task. So that's why, and I think it's important, at least for me, to continue to kind of monitor. We have a lot of monitoring goals on here. I think there's like 3 of them. You know, the Meldrum Bar, looking for funding for that, the Metro bond. You know, we have projects that are going to be in the next year or so coming up, and maybe they won't work out quite like we thought they would. So we're going to need to be continually kind of just keeping track of them. And then also the paved loop trail. So those were, and then also the Highway 99E trail crossing as that funding, I know, David, as that funding, as we actually find that funding, I'm just sure we are, there could be things that we'll need to weigh in on or not. So I just keep, that was my thought on that. And I don't know how the board feels like that's something we need to do or not do. That's why I'm asking you to kind of look at this and
Like next meeting.
no, I would like people to kind of look at it and look at the wording, get what their thoughts are, because there's a couple of new ones. You know, we're going to be looking at Nick Shannon eventually, hopefully within that next biennium. That fire risk and management in parks. I don't know if I worded that one right, Eric. I'm hoping that you'll reword it. And definitely the engaging of community support and getting the parks to a point where they can be really useful for the activities within the city. So those are new ones, but I don't know if that's all of them. So that's what I'm asking. So people want to have time to think about it till next meeting?
As goals, I think that it's great. You know, there's nothing here that's a do this item in the beginning. So I don't have any personally, this is all we've been talking about is set there. So as a goal list, I think it's fine. I don't see anything else that I would add.
Okay. Justice, what do you think? You've been awful quiet tonight.
Justice Mills speaking here. When I'm looking at this long-term paragraph right there before we get to one and everything, I was just wondering who, I haven't been on this board that long, who came up with all these goals? I mean, are these our goals that we came up with? The city master plan? I mean, I've looked at that was put out a long time ago, which is a good thing, and it's a pretty thick thing. But we're always talking about how we want to get the community involved in everything. And part of this first paragraph right there, with all the other stuff excluded, I ride my bike a lot, like much as you walk your dogs and run, which I see every once in a while. But when was the last time we actually surveyed the public, to the community of Gladstone, of what we were gonna do or anything like that? Or, I mean, they might see it in a newsletter or something, but like yesterday when I was riding my bike, you can't see this, but it's a big sign that North Clackamas Parks, and trust me, I know that they got a big park system and all that type of thing that we could never even match because of the size and everything. But they're asking to inform the future and parks of recreation with a QR code and a small sign like you see out here for junior baseball or something. You see it in somebody's yard, so the public can actually say, hey, we have a master plan, but what do you think for the next from 2025 to 2027 in your own communities, such as you've brought up today and everything? I don't go up there. I know where it's at. I know what I would do, but I won't say it right now. You guys are doing the right thing by putting signs up. I'd probably put up signs that say, hey, you're going on to school property now. Now you're in the park. There's different rules, but they pretty much apply. But to get more input from the community through survey, which I know might burden down Kristen or the city staff like Jackie or somebody like that. But heck, I mean, if that's the case, I'll come down and answer emails with their discretion, say, hey, this is what I'm gonna say to this person or something. But the community is still 12,000 people, which there's a lot of people that, hey, you see them. I live by Max Patterson and Cross Park. I see people all the time.
Right.
Meldrum even more.
Yeah.
You should raise the price of getting into Meldrum, by the way, but
Oh.
that's just, that's all I really had to say. I just have the community put in a survey for about 90 days or something, and after that, see how it reflects on these things that we want to do as well.
Okay.
That is all.
That is, okay. Justice, the master plan was done in 2017.
Okay.
And we have 20 years with that master plan before the next one. And there was public input during that time. There's been public input on other things since then. I know Meldrum had a lot of public input. Robin Hood had a lot of input, but I think citywide, maybe not so. I don't know. Thoughts?
Citywide would have been the master plan that was in 2017.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we're kind of running off of and what we see. But I hear what you're saying and thank you for voicing that.
This is 7 years later now. I've lived in the city since 1990 and, so, I mean, things change every 5 to 10 years and I'm not saying the master plan is bad at all.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's a good start. Yeah. So Eric.
And this is Eric. Along those lines, maybe and community engagement really is not something that you just do once and then put on a shelf. It's really kind of an ongoing part of the way you operate. So maybe it might almost make sense to move item number 7, which is about engaging and supporting the community involvement. Maybe that's kind of our item number 1. It's sort of what guides all the goals that fall underneath it. Because I mean, we have a lot of great ideas, but if it's not meeting what the community is interested in, or if the community has ideas that we haven't thought of, then that's also worth keeping in place.
I think that's a really good suggestion, an easy one to do. I think there's some that they need to be there. They're continuing to monitor the ones. I think those need to be there, but there is room for others. I don't know. I don't know if I'm the final say on this, so.
I mean, overall, I think it's a really good set of goals, so.
Anyone else? Shall we let them sit for a month and people think about a survey? What would the survey look like if we were going to do it? I mean, what are the, and maybe that would be the question is if we were going to do a survey, what would those questions be that we were asking people? I don't like to do surveys just because, but I also took that North Clackamas one because I walk in a lot of their parks. So I know exactly the one you're talking about. Yes,
This is David. Is it possible we could talk to Marcy Jory and see what she would suggest with regards to how that would look? 'Cause she's got experience with that.
What I would suggest is if you guys want to do a survey, make that one of your goals. We need to have these done by the November meeting so that they can be adopted by council. But that's not to say that that is something that couldn't happen as one of your goals moving forward. And like Eric said, goal number 7 pretty much covers that. So it realistically is already on the list. Yes, it's at 7, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be done just because it gets done before something else above it.
As Eric again, I will say too that we did a survey for the ad hoc tree committee recently that actually just got launched recently and was up at the Gladstone Community Fair and just getting out into the community. So it's I've got an example of something that's already doing a survey of similar purpose right now.
okay. Are you comfortable with doing a survey? Justin, you were pretty verbal about that. Doing that within the goals for the next biennium, or do you want it done now? You just want it done?
I'd say it's.
Yes, would you please?
Justice Mills, I would say, possibly have it done like Darren's talking about by November, but not submit it out to the public till maybe after, 2025 or something at the first part of the year. Cause we go into the fall and the winter and all that type of thing. And when people are sitting around and, hey, I'm gonna go look at that or something, they might be able to respond a little bit better than in the summertime or the early fall.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think it's bad to get updated survey results on how are you using the parks and what would be better, I guess. I don't think that's a bad thing. And it might help us pave some of the other ways. So, okay. So yeah, definitely moving number 7 to 1, I think is a good thing, and kind of combining all the continue to monitor ones and then see what we come up with from people. So again, if you would all look at these, like within the next, rearrange them, write them out, do something, then we'll have another look at them in September. Good deal? Yeah? Okay, cool. Kim?
Yeah, nothing for me right now.
Okay, all right. I don't want you to think we're forgetting you, so,
Not
all
at
right.
all.
Okay, is there any business from the audience? Kristen?
No, there is not, but, and this may be not the time, but I would like to remind or let the Parks Board know that the Public Works Department is doing a photo contest for our lobby in our new building. And we are really trying to get people to take pictures of our parks and submit them online. So while you guys are out and about, if you guys can share that information. There's a QR code on the website as well as our Facebook page. So we've gotten some entries, but we need more.
Okay, all right, cool. Thank you. We'll do that. Great. So our next meeting is September 9th. Darren, did you have anything else? Mayor Milch?
No, I'm good.
No?
Thank you.
Okay. So our next meeting is September 9th here. And if there's a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I just want to say real quickly before we adjourn, I saw the new River Trail sign at Cross Park. It looks amazing.
I wish they would have transposed it because it's going the opposite direction. And in my brain, that's confusing. I like to know where I'm going on the right or the left and not having to, but anyway, it's a beautiful sign. It is a beautiful sign and I appreciate having it there. So, okay, so again, a motion to adjourn.
David Michael move to adjourn.
Justice Mills, second.
Kristen, would you please call the roll?
I will. Kate Cornelius.
Yes.
Kim Agrimson,
Yes.
Eric Butler,
Yes.
Nancy Turner.
Yes.
Bruce Hildreth,
Yes.
Justice Mills,
Yes.
David Michael.
Did we get Kim? Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you.